Well, good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you all in a beautiful sunshine-filled morning here in Columbus. I always joke that the sun is always rising in Columbus and Central Ohio. You may not see it this morning, but it's out there rising. And what an eventful week. I think we've had maybe all 4 seasons this week,
Yes,
Mr. President.
last 2 days.
But thrilled to be with you. We're going to throw a lot at you this morning, and certainly we're going to have a great community-wide conversation in addition to the planning and engagement, the great work of our staff and our advisory group, our community advisory committee that's been working on this for the better part of a year. But I thought it was important, since this is the first time we are proposing major overhauls to the zoning code in this community for 70 years, I should share a little bit with you about my why around this effort. So my grandmother grew up in a holler outside of Beckley, West Virginia. Raynell, populace of probably maybe a couple hundred. She was probably related to half of them. And in their family, as part of Appalachian tradition, there was always an extra place set at the table for meals because you never knew who might stop by. And you wanted to make sure that that family member or that friend had a place at the table and felt welcomed and felt like they were at home. That's the mindset and the spirit that my parents raised me with, because as many of you know, they fostered for the better part of 30 years. They counted up at one point or another 47 kids, not all at the same time, that lived with us during that period of time. My mom continued that tradition because you never knew who might show up, who might need some supper, whether it be foster brother or sister, my brothers and sisters, or friends from around the neighborhood. So it is who I am, that there's always room for one more. We want to become the most unapologetic, pro-growth, and prosperous region in America. But in order to do that, we have to change the way we do things. We know that this code, not only is it from the mid-20th century, and this city is a little different than it was in the mid-20th century, and in the next 20 or 30 years is going to grow faster than we've ever grown before. But this code is also an example for the rest of the region, because even if we are successful with our goals to grow in a dynamic and inclusive way within the city limits, we need the rest of the region to join us. We can't solve this housing crisis, this supply crisis. We are in the midst of a housing supply crisis, and our seniors are feeling squeezed already. The men and women that make our community go, that teach our kids, that potentially care for our parents, that drive our buses, our first responders, our nurses, are already starting to feel the squeeze. And we know the stakes could not be more high. We know what will happen if we don't change. And there are examples all over America that show us that. We believe the future of this region is big enough and bright enough for everyone. And we want to continue to be a place that attracts the best and brightest, not just from Central Ohio and around the state, the nation, but the world. And the way that we do that, the way we grow in a purposeful and intentional way, dynamic and inclusive way, through the lens of equity, requires a comprehensive approach. So, today I'm thrilled to join Council President Hardin, Pro Tem Rob Dorns. I know Councilmember Dayakauer and Uribe are here as well. Carly Booz, who's the Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Trust, to talk to you a little bit about where we're at in the process and next steps ahead. It's always a great day in our city when we can talk about the incredible opportunities that are ahead of us and to share with you our plan to harness them to lift up our residents in a purposeful and intentional way. We are a city on the rise. We're creating record numbers of jobs. We're the fastest growing city in the Midwest. Unfortunately, these milestones are not without their own challenges. Homelessness and evictions are trending upward because regionally we're not building enough housing for everyone who lives here and everyone who's coming here. In 2010, we had 107 houses for every 100 households in Central Ohio. Today, we have just 102 houses for every 100 households. And too many of their neighbors are feeling the squeeze. If we keep doing business as usual, by 2030, we'll have 96 houses for every 100 households, with demand fully surpassing supply. It's happened before in cities like Seattle, Austin, San Francisco. They missed the opportunity to preserve affordability in their communities while they still could. But we will not accept that fate in Columbus. As a region, we need to build 200,000 homes over the next 10 years. And Columbus, I'm proud to say, is doing our part. Our residents have voted to approve nearly $250 million for affordable housing projects. We've updated the community reinvestment area policy to spur mixed income neighborhoods throughout our city. And we're investing millions of dollars into home repair programs that are enabling seniors and children to remain safely in their homes. But we must keep going. Modernizing our city zoning code is one of the most powerful things we can do to change our trajectory. And quite honestly, we cannot change our trajectory until we update this code. We want to control our destiny. A wise woman once told me people don't fear change, they fear loss. Growth is coming. We have to embrace it, harness it, and embrace the growth and change that's coming around our values, around our priorities, to make sure that everybody, regardless of what you do in this region to earn a living, that you're able to afford to live here too. Our zoning code is more than 70 years old. It was designed to promote suburban sprawl. Sprawl is not a strategy. It led to persistent and disgraceful racial segregation. And although we've implemented a few changes over the years, our code is still slowing down investment in our city, and it isn't working for the people of Columbus. That's why I'm presenting to Columbus City Council a proposal to update the zoning code. It proposes the creation of 6 zoning districts. Each district will have its own rules for what a property owner may build in that area. These standards will make buildings more attractive, create more room for housing and businesses, and make a neighborhood more walkable and transit more accessible. It will help to realize a stronger, more equitable city where everyone can benefit from the growth that's happening all around us. And here's what we're proposing in the new code. First, we're making height a priority, and we're connecting it to affordable housing. Under this code, a developer would have the ability to build 2 to 4 stories taller than the base code if they agree to allocate 20 to 30% of their units to income-qualified housing. Second, we're going to devote less of our city to parking. We're going to put people first, not parking. Currently, over 30,000 Columbus households don't own a car, and yet our zoning code assumes everyone does, requiring that we give up a lot of our land to park vehicles in spaces that could be put to far better use, like housing for the people of this community who make our community go. This inefficiency drives up construction costs, and these costs get passed on to all of us, whether we're renters or owners. This proposal, on the other hand, permits a developer to scale parking to accommodate anticipated demand, as opposed to requiring a specific number of spaces that might not be a good fit for the location or the development in question. Third, we're going to have much clearer design standards for what our buildings should look like. By better articulating our expectations, we can raise the bar for quality and design in our new buildings. City staff and area commissions can spend less time negotiating with developers, and in an industry where time is money, we can expect improved and faster processes to yield tangible savings, including lowering rents for Columbus tenants. Ultimately, however, this is going to result in a more equitable process for everyone. Thanks to objective design standards and straightforward language, the new code will be easier for small developers, homeowners, and community stakeholders to use. This means more people can invest in our neighborhoods, and we can bring higher quality developments online even faster, which benefits everyone. When you look at it by the numbers, the code is proposed for 12,300 parcels of land in our city. If we continue with our current code, these parcels are projected to create 6,000 new homes over the next decade. Unacceptable, unsustainable. But if we choose the future and we embrace growth in a dynamic and inclusive way through the lens of equity, if we update the code as this proposal suggests, the market will create a projected 88,000 homes. Let me say that again. 88,000 homes for our neighbors in the next 10 years. That's 44% of our region's housing demand, enough to start alleviating the housing pressures we're all experiencing, and will only experience more in the next 10 years. I want to underscore that we've done our homework in creating this proposal. It was informed by a decade of regional studies, dozens of community and area plans, 2 years of technical analysis, and substantial input from thousands of residents. And we need to keep hearing from you. Should Council adopt a resolution Monday night to accept this proposal into consideration, we'll open at least a 60-day public comment period. Starting Tuesday, residents can log on to columbus.gov/zoning update and read the full proposal. From there, you can also access an interactive map and look at and comment on every single parcel that is potentially subject to change. Also, on Tuesday, we'll open up this space as the Zone-In Gallery. We'll have educational exhibits and digital displays and plenty of staff on hand to answer your questions and help them learn more about the details of this proposal. We want to hear from you about this. City Council wants to hear from you about this. I will tell you, though, this is a decade where plans and studies and reports and recommendations will not stand. This is a decade of action. This is a decade where we have to embrace the future. This is a community of greatness, and it's a community that can grow in a dynamic and prosperous way. But we have to make tough decisions in the next 10 years to make sure that there's always room for one more. So with that, I'll introduce our great partner in so much of this work. Are there any of the advisory council members that are here today? I know they'll be with us probably next week, but I do want to thank them. They've been working with this director for better part of a year in helping us work through this. Folks from all over the community that have been part of this process and engagement with thousands of residents. So just want to acknowledge them for all their work. But with that, I guess I'm officially turning over this draft to the council president and welcome him to share any comments. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is truly an exciting day for our community. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Remy and Councilmember Day Alkire, for joining us, and certainly our President Pro Tem, who you will hear from next, who alongside the administration and the advisory group and so many others has really taken the lead and will be our leader on council to shepherd this process through. The mayor began his remarks talking about his grandmother and why this is important to him. I'll do the same. As the mayor said, our current zoning code dates back to the 1950s, an era when my grandmother's home on Lexington Avenue on the Near East Side was demolished to make way for Interstate 71. It was a time of rotary phones and black and white TV, and it was built around black and white ideas of racial exclusion, like redlining, only allowing single-family homes in most of our city, which at the time was a third of the size that it is now. Today, we are a new Columbus, a diverse and dynamic community. We are the 14th largest city in the country and the fastest growing in the Midwest. But this zombie zoning code keeps us rooted in the past. It makes hard to build the housing that we need, contributing to rising rents and skyrocketing home values and home prices. This is something that you don't need to read about. We all know this right now in Central Ohio. And it has fueled a pattern of car-centric suburban sprawl that makes it hard to build the dense, mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods our residents want now. So let me be clear. It's time to move on and leave this outdated zoning code in the past. We all know that in the next 25 years, nearly 1 million people will move to Central Ohio. And a few 100,000 of those folks will probably end up right here within our city. That is a fact. It is not up for debate any longer. We need to build, as the mayor said, 200,000 housing units in the next 10 years just to keep up. What is up for debate is if we will take the bold steps that we need to do to plan for that type of growth. If we do, we can chart a new course for Columbus, a sustainable future with abundant housing for all. We can make sure that our new neighbors have a place to put down roots and that longtime residents don't get priced out of the neighborhoods that they love and that made them. We can have enough density of a customer base that we can create grocery stores in many neighborhoods, child care centers, restaurants, and our neighborhoods that our residents want. Or, if we don't, if we are afraid, if we are short-sighted, or if we are complacent, then Columbus will go the way of cities like the mayor acknowledged. We can look around the country and see the other way. We can look at Austin. We can look at Denver. And we can look at San Francisco, where the folks who make up the beauty of the city cannot afford to live in it. I don't believe that that's our future. Now, remember, this zoning proposal is just the first step. It affects only about 12,000 parcels, so that's just less than 5% of all the lots in our city. But it is an inflection point for us as a city. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that this city rises to the occasion. So I'm going to turn the podium over to my friend, my colleague, and the leader of this process on council, President Pro Tem Dorrance, who will lead an open and transparent process that will continue to invite folks in to be a part of this very, very important conversation about who we are now, but also who we want to be. And when we are done having that dialogue, council will vote. And I believe that we will work together to move our community forward. Please help me welcome our President Pro Tem and the Zoning Chair, Rob Dorrance.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's an exciting day in Columbus. A couple of folks I want to thank that were incredibly important to getting us here today. You know, we stand here as elected leaders announcing what will fundamentally be one of the biggest reforms for generations in the future. But there are folks that have been working on this tirelessly for years. So I want to thank Director of Building and Zoning Services, Scott Messer, and his staff for their incredible work on this. Kevin Wheeler, the Assistant Director of Growth Policy for the City of Columbus. The City Attorney's Office, who has been incredibly helpful to get us here today. All those folks across their staffs have been incredibly important towards what is in front of us here today, and frankly, what the community now has the opportunity to review. Now, the Council President mentioned that I chair the Zoning Committee at Columbus City Council, and 2 years ago, he asked me to take on that assignment, and at first I told him no. Because if you know anything about zoning, it's like watching paint dry. Things are slow, they're expensive, and they can be frustrating. But when you come down to Columbus City Council at 6:30 on Monday nights and you see our zoning meetings, you will see firsthand that this code is broken. Every single year, we have hundreds of rezonings and variances that come through that process. And again, talking about that being confusing, that being in the details, that being the weeds, what does that mean? When we talk about a zoning code not being modernized in 70 years, the mayor mentioned this city has changed a hell of a lot in 20 years, right? So when we think about the most basic ideas of how we build a city is, what can someone build on a particular piece of property in your community? We have not reevaluated our city comprehensively in 70 years. Think about how different we are. Think about as both the mayor and the council president mentioned, what we want to encourage right now. Connectivity to transit, walkable neighborhoods. That is nearly the exact opposite of what that code from 70 years ago wanted to encourage. You know, I'll give you a couple anecdotes about what we see right now under this code. You know, we had a small business owner in the Erie Side about a year ago came to council. She wanted to open a salon in her garage. Everyone in the neighborhood was pretty well excited about that. Longtime resident who, you know, again, wanted to become an entrepreneur themselves. But in making that change, this salon would have one chair. One chair. The current zoning code would require her to have 4 off-street parking spots. 4. So think about that. We've got the person that's coming to get their hair done. Apparently they're driving separately. And then they're bringing 3 friends with them, apparently who are also driving separately, on a street that had ample street parking. Yet she had to waste close to 10 months of her time and effort, and also had to hire an attorney to navigate this process to get to my desk on Columbus City Council at 6:30 on Monday night. Many of you in this room know about the Healthy Homes Initiative. When we talk about affordable housing, we talk about how to preserve affordable housing in areas of the city that are rapidly changing and growing. The Healthy Homes Initiative is a wonderful example of public-private partnership with the city working with folks to preserve affordable housing in neighborhoods that are quickly changing. The city has taxpayer investment in those projects to help preserve that housing long-term. But rather than building a single-family house on one parcel, you know, that initiative is building duplexes. 2 families under one roof, under one parcel. The lightest increase in density you possibly can get on those parcels. But again, it's about putting roofs over people's heads. Every single one of those projects had to come to Columbus City Council to get a variance. Again, tacking 6, 12, 18 months onto that process. When we knew as a community, everyone said, yes, we want to do this. Many of the projects that come to us on Monday nights have full approvals from people in the community, from the Development Commission, from the Area Commission, from Civic Association. Everyone says, yes, build this. Yet our code says, how about we add months and months and months, if not years, into that process that will slow us down from the task of creating more housing in our community. You know, as the mayor and council president said, this is the first phase. And I want to be very clear with folks on that when we talk about where we're starting and where we're going. You know, the council president talked about this amounting to less than 5% of the parcels across our community. These have been specifically chosen in corridors across Columbus, specific areas where those streets function as the main streets of those communities, areas that we believe when we talk about more heights and more density, that those areas are ready for it, that infrastructure investments by the city are going to be there to make sure that it can support that density. And that is incredibly important as, again, we are also talking about making a generational investment in transit through the Link Us initiative here in Columbus. If you want high frequency, reliable mass transit, you have to have population density. And that is how this code is going to help supplement and support that initiative. As the mayor said, we're creating 6 new zoning districts. Right now, our zoning code is more about telling you what you can't do than what you can do. These districts will allow more flexibility within them to allow folks to make more decisions about what the most appropriate development is within that area, while also having real, as the mayor said, guidelines on design. Right now, we allow this type of back and forth negotiation between area commissions, neighborhood folks, the city of Columbus, and frankly, Columbus City Council as well, sometimes for months, over what a building is going to look like and feel. Doesn't it make a lot more sense for us to do that on the front end as a community, to say, these are the standards that we think all of us in this particular area should realize is the most appropriate within that area, and allow that to be done on the front end right now, rather than allowing for a project by project negotiation, which, as we talked about, when we think about how codes promote or don't promote equity, we can see this as this translates out into the community right now. Those areas of the city with more time and expertise oftentimes receive better projects within their areas because they're able to have that time to engage than other areas of the city that maybe folks are, again, working 2 jobs trying to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. That's wrong. And this code is going to make sure that we're not reliant upon that in order to make sure that good projects come to every part of Columbus. So one of the other big things that we're talking about here today, and both the mayor and council president alluded to this, we're eliminating parking minimums within these corridors, right? We are going to allow the marketplace to determine what parking should be required for that area. Now, we'll have folks that will be very concerned and think, you're never going to be able to find a parking spot ever again in the city of Columbus. Well, I'm here to tell you, one, we've already done this in downtown Columbus, so when you see all the new residential development that's happened over the last decade in downtown Columbus, there was not a single requirement for them to require a single parking spot. And yet, what did those folks build? Enough parking to make sure that residents in those locations had somewhere to park. Also, at the same time, we're not the first city to try this. Dozens of cities across the country have eliminated parking minimums as a way to right-size parking rather than having some arbitrary minimum that, again, someone at some point said 1.5 parking spots per unit sounds like a good number. I don't know where the hell that came from, but I can tell you right now, when you look across project by project across Columbus, particularly for our affordable housing partners, that you look and they are overparked compared to what they need. And as the mayor mentioned, one of the most significant drivers of housing costs right now is parking. $30,000 to $100,000 per space if you're talking about structured parking. If you're talking about surface level parking, we're taking land that could otherwise be a housing unit and dedicating it to a car. Again, the current code prioritizes parking over people, and we need to move past that as a community, because frankly, if we all say we value folks having a place to call home, then it's time for us to actually put that value into action. Now, it's been 2 years of us talking about this initiative, 2 years to get us here today with this proposal. As we've talked about, on Monday in Columbus City Council, we'll have a resolution before us to adopt a resolution to start a 60-day comment period. Every individual across Columbus is encouraged to engage on this. The idea that we're going to try to make sure that every single person understands whether or not they live or work or live nearby one of these parcels, to truly understand what this new code means for that part of their neighborhood. As the mayor mentioned, there'll be an interactive map that will be up on Monday for folks really dig down on that and view, we're going to do the best we possibly can in the coming months for folks to truly understand what this means. The code itself will come before council as well. We're not going to vote on that code on Monday. We expect, again, that 60-day period to start on Tuesday. I don't expect council to vote on this initiative until later this summer. And that is because we need everyone across our community to understand what these changes mean. Our area commissioners, our civic leaders, folks in the business community, now is the time. If we're truly going to change our system from going from project by project, exception from exception, to one in which we have holistic standards baked in on the front end, we need folks to understand that change. Now is the time to bring your voice to this process. Because once we make these changes, my hope is that on 6:30 on Monday nights at Columbus City Council, our agenda is a lot lighter when it comes to variances and zonings. And the reason for that being lighter is that we're building more housing because you can, by right, in these zoning districts. And this is just the first phase. And we'll talk about what comes next in the future, but this is a really important day for Columbus and where we go from there. The one thing I can promise you is that Columbus City Council will be listening. This is a example of a radical listening process. Again, now is that time. We hope, again, to vote on this this summer. And from here until that time, I can pledge to every single person in this room and across the community that we are actively interested in your voice in this process. Because we need this to be reflective to make sure that when we pass this, that folks understand what this means for them, their families, and in the future. So thank you for being here today on this historic day. And I have the opportunity to introduce a friend of mine, Carly Booz, who's the Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Alliance here in Columbus, who's done amazing work lifting these issues up so that folks truly understand if you say you want housing to be affordable in Columbus, what does that actually mean? And it means something very different in 2024 and in the future than what I think prior generations thought of. And Carly's doing amazing work with her organization to make people better understand what that means in Columbus. Carly, thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Morning.
I love that so many of these remarks have been anchored in our personal experiences of home, because I think all of us recognize that home is more than a building. It is much more than a structure, and that's reflected up here today. I know that a safe, loving, affordable home is essential for a safe, loving, and prosperous community. It's not just the overwhelming research and data that tells me housing is our first line of defense for protecting our people from rapidly rising costs and uncontrolled growth. It's my life of experience as a Buckeye, and as a mom, and as a worker, and as someone who has lived in this community. I am a homeowner who is terrified about how quickly property taxes are outpacing incomes, especially for the seniors in my life. I am a mom who is worried that by the time my 8-year-old graduates college, God willing, he's going to face a housing market that looks more like California than Columbus. And I'm a friend who can't stand watching people that I care about spend more and more and more money on rent while saving less and less towards a home of their own. Columbus's identity has always been as a place to start a life and to grow a family and to nurture a business. But as our housing costs go through the roof, we are watching that quality of life begin to slip away. Today, we have fewer homes for people who are our child care providers, our school bus drivers, our healthcare workers than New York City. And even with major employers running full speed towards Columbus to create the jobs of the future with resilient and prosperous and abundant jobs for our people, last year we built even fewer homes than the year before that. To confront these problems, we need to name one of their biggest causes, which is that we do not have enough homes. And zoning code, which was built in the 1950s by people who have never met us, for a world that looks nothing like ours, is standing between us and that future that we want. Today, though, we get to decide what we want our community to look like. We get the power and the privilege and the responsibility to align our zoning laws not just with our growth and our housing needs and our vision for the future, but also with our morality. Do we want development to sprawl into every cornfield in central Ohio? And do we want to drive an hour each way to work every single morning? Or do we want to bring vitality back to our historic downtowns and our business corridors? Do we want vast stretches of surface parking lots or vibrant neighborhoods? Do we want vacant strip malls or welcoming homes? Importantly, do we want to continue the policies that let Columbus become the second most segregated community in the country, or do we want to pave the way forward through inclusion and respect? The Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio knows what we want. We want our kids to be able to live in the communities that we raised them in, and we want our elders to be able to retire in the communities that they helped build. And we want every single worker and every single neighbor to have a dignified, secure place to call home. This isn't just the Alliance's goals either. This is something that we've heard in every single community meeting, in the dozens and hundreds of meetings with our neighbors across town, and every kitchen table conversation that we've been fortunate enough to join. And it's exactly what that data does say as well. In fact, 9 out of 10 Americans believe that it is personally important to them that their elected officials work to ensure there's enough housing for all of us. And that is exactly what Zone In's promise is. That's why we're here, and we are proud to stand in support of the Zone In initiative and to commend Mayor Ginther, Council President Hardin, and Pro Tem Dorans, as well as the other members of Council, Day Auer, and Remy this afternoon, and the entire team who is leading this work and learning from the lessons of cities that have come before us, and most importantly, listening to the people that we were all elected and here to serve. The community has asked for more homes, more affordability, more walkability, and more sustainability, and that is exactly what I have heard proposed here today. They are listening radically, so it's our job to speak. If you are worried about being able to buy a home or pay rent or afford the mortgage, or you just care about people who are, I urge you to come down and visit the zoning gallery next week and get engaged in the process. These are some of the most important housing decisions our community will make at one of the most crucial times in our history. You have to show up, and you have to make sure that your experiences and your aspirations and your vision for our community is baked into our laws. Together, through convenings like this and projects like Zone In, we absolutely can solve our affordable housing challenge. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today, and thank you all for making housing a priority for Columbus.
I was almost ready to do a little call and response with Carly there. He's getting me going. I think Councilmember Barosa de Padilla has joined us as well. Good morning, Councilmember, and thank you for being here. I'll wrap up, and then I'll ask everybody to stick around to do one-on-ones with the press if they have follow-up questions and so forth for a few minutes here this morning. I'm going to take the former mayor of Whitehall, brilliant mayor and leader, Kim Maggard. She used to flip NIMBYism and say that Whitehall wanted to be a community of YIMBYs. So instead of not in my backyard, yes, in my backyard, wanting Whitehall to grow and prosper and welcome the best and the brightest from around the community, the state, the nation, and the country. So I want to take that and pitch that to the people of this region. Yes, let's be unapologetically pro-growth, commitment to prosperity, equity, dynamic and inclusive growth. The intersectionality, especially since Councilmember Rosa de Padilla joined us with the Link Us initiative that was mentioned as well. Critically important things facing this community right now. If we make these choices, if we make these commitments, if we choose to invest in ourselves and our neighbors, the sky's the limit for this community. So let's challenge ourselves, each and every one of us here and our neighbor, to become that region of YIMBYs. The sun is always rising in Columbus, so let's go greet the dawn. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate you guys.
We'll take it from here.
Yeah, good luck.